What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and today's video is going to be about the looming crisis that awaits all of us. And people are so distracted right now that what we're seeing trending is just entertainment. We're not seeing people worried about the coming inflation or hyperinflation. When smart people all start saying the same thing and they're synchronizing in the way they're thinking, it should tell you something of what's coming. And I want to educate you on this because I'm being educated as well. I'm learning as we're going about the new developments that are happening. So let's start with this. Biden's $6 trillion budget plan, Yellen's inflation view, and here we see President Joe Biden is set to unveil a budget that would increase federal spending to $6 trillion in the coming fiscal year. That is insane. Are you kidding me? Then Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said above normal inflation is likely to persist through the end of the year before fading. We've seen the cost of things just keep going up. It's not going down. Are your incomes going up? I mean, aside from the stimulus and the unemployment, has your wages changed? A longer period than officials had previously indicated. Yellen travels to London with her G7 counterparts um, in this look at the week ahead. Okay, so we know that. Next, I want to show you this. Kristalina Georgieva. She is from the IMF and she had a meeting. She said, "My thanks to the UK for an excellent G7 finance ministers and bank governors meeting on fostering a green global economic recovery. We look forward to further discussion and progress next week in the G7 finance ministers meeting in London." Okay, so that's happening. We see all the culmination of all these things preparing all these nations preparing for the looming crisis, a crash, a liquidity crisis, something that was kicked down the road in the great financial crisis of '08. Now, I want you to watch this video by Michael Maloney, and he's going to perfectly explain what this budget proposal by Biden means. And folks are not paying attention to this, and it's so dire. So dire. Take a listen.
What really gets me is that nobody believes in personal responsibility, freedom, and free markets. We're looking for the government to do more and more and more. And when you look at the top down, where society is controlled by the government, that always fails. And, we ask, well, who's going to fix the roads? Who's going to do this? You could just contract a bunch of the parallel highways going one direction and the other direction to competing private contractors and turn the easements into a source of revenue for the government instead of a cost for the government. And if you've ever been on a private toll road, they're usually great. And so you could make a source of revenue from this. It could be much better and at a much lower cost. People go, well, the government's paying for it, so it's free. Well, I would much rather pay a private company per mile that I'm driving than pay the amount of taxes that I don't know the exact amount that it's costing me to drive on a mile of road, but it's got to be less through private industry when you don't have the bureaucracy absorbing. So, you tax a certain sector, a certain number of people, and then you run that through a bureaucracy and everybody has to get their cut before it actually goes to the department that's going to create the roads. Why not just pay the department that's going to create the roads instead of paying the IRS and the Treasury and Congress and the whole the department that is in Washington D.C. and then all of the state and local departments that administer all of this. The amount of economic energy, I call it, that is lost through this process, there's just no way that the government can do anything better than the free market can do it. It's much better to have people open up their wallets and vote for what they want society to be than for some politician to tell us what society is going to be.
Now, that's important because this $6 trillion budget is set to help with a lot of things. Okay, there's been lots of talks about it. And when you start having the government become more and more involved with things, that is not a good signal. There's never been a time in history where the government is so involved that everything leads to prosperity. No, it has failed. That's why the free market capitalism has been so successful here in the US, because we allow for these private industries to take care of things that need to be taken care of. And like he said, if the government funds it, then each government agency has to take a cut, like the IRS, the Congress, etc., etc. And right now we're seeing bigger and bigger involvement by the government, and that's not gonna lead to great things. Now, talking about that, as we see bigger budgets for uh, the fiscal years, um, it's gonna become worse. We're kicking the can down the road, and you got to pay the piper at some point or another. So there's a looming crisis that's coming our way, and there's going to be a crash. And whether that happens, when that happens, who knows? But what's important is that you're ready, that you're prepared beforehand. But another thing is, how do you solve a liquidity crisis or a crash that happens from a liquidity crisis? Okay, and especially if you're talking about a great reset, how does that even happen? And this brings me to my next point. This is from Goldman Sachs, and I know that if you go to the link where this was once available, it doesn't work anymore. And but what's interesting is we see that right here, we see the G7 central banks, which I just showed you. Kristalina Georgieva was meeting with the G7 group, and Janet Yellen is going to meet with the G7 group. And we see Ripple is involved here. And what that means, we're gonna see, but we know what XRP can do. Okay, we know the type of utility it has, and in case of a liquidity crisis, who are would be the financial plumbers to that? None other than the digital asset XRP. And Ripple has done a good job of um, implementing, or not implementing, but kind of distributing uh, to different areas in the world, and kind of allowing different institutions to trial this. MoneyGram was an example of being able to use low value payments, and use and testing in the cross border remittance arena. And here we also have this. Um, Now, this speculation, who knows if this is true or not, but it's interesting to know. All G7 agreed and signed. The gold standard is back. IMF looking for suitable timing for the announcement. Gold will kill the Fed. XRP will trigger new paradigm. Now, we know there's meetings right now with the IMF and the G7. We also know that Janet Yellen's going to that. So, very interesting. Um, XRP Crypto Wolf posted this. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse was saying, we can unlock trillions of dollars of trapped capital to make the global economy more efficient. And that comes from the Nostro Vostro accounts that can have anywhere between 10 to $27 trillion in value. And so that's what he's talking about. And he said it in multiple interviews. Now he says all the XRP that's ever been created has already been created. So there's a zero inflation dynamic. So he's saying what's there is there. So it can absorb, and we know it's designed to handle all the money. So if there's no more XRP ever going to created, it's going to absorb all the money. And what that will do to the price of each individual token, I mean, there's no limit to it. And so we're talking about all the money here. And here, I think this perfectly sums up how the banking system is changing. The ISO 20022, removing LIBOR, going to SOFR, Basel 3 and Basel 6, gold under Basel 3, open banking, CBDCs, crypto assets, DeFi, interledger protocol plus overledger, financial inclusion. And he's right, the world is indeed changing. Okay, now I'm gonna pull up a great refresher from the archives, and this is a quick reminder of showing you what's gonna come. And people may not see it, but right now there's a currency crisis globally. Everything that's happening right now, it's a global crisis. And we're hitting that point which we're going to see a crash like never before. And it's going to affect each individual person. And so you better be ready. Listen to this.
About the future of cryptocurrencies, where do you see the future of these digital assets and maybe the role of Bitcoin and Ripple or XRP in that future?
Yeah, so our view is that these digital assets really become supplemental to the existing family of currencies, right? So every country still needs its own, fiat currency for all kinds of reasons that I won't get into it. Very complicated, right? And I actually think that the big four, the yen, the euro, the dollar, the RMB, they actually, I think, come stronger in this world that we're going into, partially because of digital assets.
Okay.
That these digital assets actually contribute to a world that's more interoperable, where more people around the globe can get access to these big four. And most of global commerce is done in the big four. So I think you have a bifurcation going on. Those big four get stronger. I think some of the smaller currencies, maybe even more of the very small fiat currencies, become less relevant, maybe even disappear. A country could have its own fiat, but still use one of the big four. You have lots of
like
examples.
Montenegro, right?
Absolutely. But I think then where the digital assets fit in, like things like XRP and Bitcoin, they're kind of in that mid-range. They become, I think, like the Singapore dollar or the Swiss franc, and they become useful in kind of lubricating the world to make it easier for those big four to get in the hands of people all around the world. So that's useful. And then it might also be things like applications and devices that maybe primarily use one of those digital assets. So that's kind of the view we have. So I think in that world, countries should be less threatened by what's going on and see them as simply supplemental rather than a threat. Too much talk about it being a threat. Our industry has done a bad job in too much bravado and chest pounding. It's just kind of silly.
Okay, and I know there's a lot of talk about people are saying that the U.S. dollar is going to go away and it's going to crash to this and this. I don't buy that. I do think, like he said, it's going to become stronger. It's not going anywhere. This is just a race to get to CBDCs, and I really believe that. And I think that what XRP will provide is it will be supplemental and it's going to lubricate the system. When that liquidity crisis hits and it's global, you're going to see it come to life with its full utility. And so that's what awaits. However, the timeline, who knows? But we know it's coming. Like I said, all these smart minds are synchronizing in the same thought pattern that there is inflation or hyperinflation coming our way, and there is a big crisis that's going to happen. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens. Hope this episode has brought you some value. Like and subscribe, comment below. What are your thoughts? Like always, I like hearing from you. This is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.